one, the only George B. Thomas. Hey,
We're creating a culture where it's all about education. We're creating a space where everybody can be the best that they can be. They can live the best life that they want to live.
this is the Built Happily podcast, where we dive into building apps, companies, and relationships in the HubSpot ecosystem.
As HubSpot grows, so does the opportunity, and we put you in the room with the people making it all happen.
On today's episode of the Built Happily podcast, we're talking with the one, the only George B. Thomas.
George shares with us his personal journey on becoming a HubSpot content legend. He dives into what it's like to run a HubSpot Solutions Partner business with his feme. You're going to have to watch to figure that one out, obviously. And then finally, he shares what you're all afraid of, but you just don't know it yet. All that coming up on this episode of the Build Happily podcast.
We're talking about George B. Thomas. Let me tell you something, George. Back in the Alchemist days, me and Tyrone were scouting around. What is HubSpot? What is this thing? Who knows what they're talking about? And there was only two individuals that I could ever find scouring around my little Google search. This is before AI, so there was no, hey man, just somebody throw me who's the GOAT here in this realm. I found Remington, shout out to young Remington, and I found George B. Thomas. I was like,
Yeah,
George
buddy.
B. Thomas must be a baller because he put the B explicitly in between the George and the Thomas. And
It's actually a good story.
I got to understand that George B. Thomas knows what he's talking about. And out of the few, the proud, the GOATs, right? It was George. So George, I just want to say shout out, thank you back in the days, back in the early Alchemist days. It was you that helped me understand what is this doing? Why am I doing this? What is this ecosystem? So that's my edification of this legend that's on the cast today.
Man, I appreciate that. And it's funny because I didn't set out to ever be called the GOAT. And it's really it's hard for me to accept that, but I get it in emails. I get it in things like we're doing today in this podcast episode, because I was having fun. I was adding value. I was educating myself. And the only thing that I think I did differently back then that just wasn't happening is I'd learn something and go teach it.
Yeah.
Learn something and go teach it and just rinse and repeat. And I wasn't trying to go viral. I was just trying to add value, and one brick stacked up onto the next. And here we are, brother, telling the story of one bedroom log cabin to HubSpot GOAT, I guess.
Man, easy journey.
Easy. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, long journey. And I want you to tell the story here. Right. But a little kind of mushy moment from me on my side. I mean, I am super stoked that I get to sit in a riverside room with two people that have been monumentously important, for the way I look at like my own career in the HubSpot world, right? George, I was, watching you for a very long time before I, even started to put any content out there into the universe. And I think, our friendship that kind of built over time was really one of the things that like helped me, become confident enough and continue to have fun and be inspired in all these different ways to take what I loved, which was HubSpot, and the knowledge that I built around it and the opinions and ideas that I had around it. And you gave me the confidence to put a lot of that stuff out there and keep doing it and like try new stuff. So I want to thank you for that. You are just like, you're a huge, huge piece of my journey here. I always called you my HubSpot spirit animal. So I want to thank you for everything you've given me over the years. And Dax, I'm on this journey now because of you, man, right? Like, you were the first one that I really saw out there going down into this unreally charted territory in the HubSpot world, at least in terms of building apps on HubSpot. And it was seeing what you and Tyrone were doing in the early days that got my engine revving and like super excited around the idea of, oh crap, like we're literally, right where like the iPhone was before the App Store came out. Right. And or right at the point where the App Store came out and those few developers started like working on building apps and everything and turned the iPhone into what it is today. You guys are doing that for HubSpot. And it was really interesting to see how you guys were doing this before a lot of other folks, and to be like on the front lines with you now on that whole, I don't want to call it a battlefield because it's all love here.
That's
right.
all
The fact that we get to be working together, like doing this stuff. And you were such a important part of like me starting down that whole path. And now I get to sit with both of you in a freaking Riverside room and we get to
Yeah.
talk about George's story. It's really
Before
cool,
we do
man.
that
So,
though,
yeah.
before we talk about my story, I want to be honest with both of you. I was super excited to do this interview.
Yeah, now you're regretting
Dax,
it.
no, I'm not. No way, no way. And I'm just telling you, Dax, I remember the first call that we had before you had that background. And you were like, I want to do this video thing. And you've been doing this video thing. And I got off the call and you were like, I'm going to get lights and I'm going to do this. And I got off the call. And just so you know, I was like, that dude has the spice. Like, that dude has the spice. He's going to do something. Like, I can tell there's something special there. And Max, I'll never forget our astronaut conversation where I
Yeah.
was like, yo, bro, like, who taught the astronauts to be astronauts? Just go out and do the thing that you want to do.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not old enough to be your dad. Thank God that would. But I have sat back and watched and had those proud papa moments where, you know, to watch you do the TikTok and the link talk and like just graduate out of HubSpot into this new journey and career and be a massive force on the Hub Heroes podcast. Dude, I'm so proud of both of you and what you're doing and being able to sit in this room and have just a dope conversation for the listeners. Yeah, I'm just jazzed up, guys.
Yeah, you're my HubSpot dad 100%.
There we go. There we go.
I completely consider you that.
Now it's officially that. So this is the whole point of this, right? Like at HubSpot, we always talk about building apps. We always talk about building solutions, building companies. But this is true community in effect currently that has been built. And it wasn't like it started yesterday. It was on day one. And we want to talk about how when people walk into this HubSpot ecosystem, on day one, you have road dogs. On day two, you're going to have multiple resources and people around. And it's a place to be. It's a supportive community. We're building more than just stuff, right? More than just software that's in the cloud. And we're building things that are tangible. We've all seen each other and hung out in person multiple times now, which is bananas, right? Multiple times we've gone and kicked it together. So day one is important. Day one is big. We want to get people in to understand this. And that's the whole point of the Build Happily podcast is you're going to build more than you think when you show up. So George, let's take it back, man. Let's take it back. You said something about the B, right? George B. Thomas. What was day one of HubSpot for George B. Thomas? Was it George Thomas and then you had to bring in the B when you got official? Tell us.
Yeah, the B is a real interesting story, but let me start at the beginning of the journey. I was in Massillon, Ohio. I was at a small agency called Wild Boy Design. And I was a developer designer guy, like a pizza and a six pack is on one side and websites are just flying out the other side. And I'm like, nerdy guy, leave me alone. It is what it is. And let's rock and roll. And all of a sudden, our social media guy, John, comes running in and he's, man, you got to check out this world's largest webinar by a company called HubSpot. And we're like, a what? By the way, he didn't sound like that. I just make him sound like that for story form. I'm like, what by who? And it's a webinar by this company called HubSpot. And so the owner, Zach Basner, and I went into the conference room and we started watching this webinar. We got to hear Mark Killens for the first time, Sarah Bedrick, and Chris LaDolce, the old school HubSpot Academy cats.
Cool.
And I was like, this is amazing. This is interesting. And they said these words that forever changed my life. We're going to give away 10 free tickets to the top 5% of tweeters that use the hashtag world's largest webinar. The funny thing is Zach didn't pick up his phone once. I didn't pick up my phone once, but John's fingers were on fire. Dude was just like going to, Long story short, we win 2 tickets. So Zach and I, September 2012, fly to Boston for the first time. We get to go to this is before it was even in the BCEC. This is back when it's like in the like smaller place. There's 2,500 folks. We get to hear Gary Vaynerchuk speak for the first time. It's the AC/DC orange jumpsuits helicopter intro to inbound. And I hear HubSpot talking about, don't call me customer, call me human. And between that thread of don't call me customer, call me human, and the thread of hearing Gary Vaynerchuk speak about just like working your face off, hustle culture, like creating content, being of value to the world, I was like, I think I want to be a marketer when I grow up. I'm not sure why, but there's something here. And so we got back from inbound, we got HubSpot for the agency, and I started down this journey of HubSpot Academy webinars and certifications. And one became three became six. Got to the point where it's like 42 plus being a HubSpot certified trainer, plus doing HubSpot onboarding for HubSpot themselves. I'm way fast forwarding, by the way, but let me go back for a second, because I think it's really relevant for the people who are listening to this podcast to realize that my journey started with education. My journey started with people on this planet adding value to the world. So why does it surprise anybody that when I started to get to the point in my career where it was time to put the gas pedal down to the like as fast as we could, that it came back to adding value by creating content and educating humans about the things that we needed to educate them. So Wild Boy, the next year, up and coming agency, HubSpot agency. The year after that, out of business.
There we go.
Okay. At that point, what happens is I get a phone call from Marcus Sheridan. And at that point, he owned the sales line. Now he's part of the Impact crew, but he owned the sales line. He was teaching people about content marketing, and he needed somebody to teach the humans about HubSpot. And so all of a sudden he offered me a job. I said, I think I won the marketing lottery. We moved from Ohio to North Carolina because we could live anywhere we wanted to live. And I started to work for Marcus and do HubSpot training. Here's where it all changed. He said to me, I think we should create a podcast specific to HubSpot users. This is like 2014. And it's the Hubcast, and you can still search it and find it. There's some old school. Wow, that's what George used to be like and sound like, man. Like he's come. There's been a journey, but you can go back to the Hubcast, and we started doing that. And what's funny is, and another lesson in this is, he said, I think we should start a podcast. And I said, I think you're out of your mind. And he goes, why? And I go, I hate my voice. I don't know why anybody would want to listen to my voice. And what's funny is we did the Hubcast for like the first couple months, and we went to inbound, and people were like, oh, Marcus Sheridan, George B. Thomas. It wasn't B yet, but George Thomas. Oh, we love listening to your podcast. You sound like a radio announcer. Now, the reason I'm bringing that up is because I want everybody listening to this to realize that sometimes what you think is your biggest weakness is your largest strength. And sometimes you just got to dive in and you got to go for what you're being told to do and believe in yourself and go for it. Because now my voice going on podcasts, doing podcasts, or creating videos is like what has gotten me to where we're actually at now and what we're building now. But here's the other thing. He said after we started to do the podcast too, I think you should start doing HubSpot video tutorials, which, by the way, I didn't know how to do a podcast, didn't know how to start a podcast. I really didn't know a lot about video. So all of this was like, we're going to launch it and we're going to learn along the way. Couple lessons there. If you're listening to this, you got to get real good at pivoting into the things that feel like they're the right direction. Secondly, you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable during the learning curve to make yourself something great at something. Okay. So we start making videos in 2014. This is way before the year of video. That was 2018, not 2019, not 2020. Anyway, it's always going to be the year of video, but we started it in 2014. And my first video was a photo of me leaning against a brick wall with 3 HubSpot certifications for about the first minute and a half. And then it went to a screen share using the old school Camtasia software of like me showing the HubSpot screen. And then just, it sucked. It was the worst ever, but it's the best video I've ever created because it was the video that started me on the journey that now I can sit back and be like, in the last 10 to 12 years, I've probably created over 3,000 HubSpot tutorials. So the amount of businesses that have watched those, the amount of lives that I've been able to impact by just creating a video every day or every other day or a couple a week and putting them out there for people. Hey, if you like it, if you don't, no judgment, no expectation. It's just my way of giving back to the community because there's humans out there that don't want to be called customer. They want to be able to actually do business in a great way. And this was my little part of being able to be helpful through it. Now, the B comes in this. All of a sudden, people are like, George Thomas, I tried to search you. I can't find you. What they're finding is a war hero and a mathematician. And I'm like, sheesh, I'm neither of those. So we ended up branding on the podcast and in the video tutorials. This is George B. Thomas, right? Now all of a sudden people are searching for George B. Thomas, and who are they finding? Me. And so in about 2014, end of 2014, beginning of 2015, George B. Thomas was born to the internet because it needed to be a way that people could search and find me versus finding other people that were on Google search results.
Yeah. So George, tell us, like, so for the I mean, we were Tarantinoing this a bit, where we started of the past and worked our way forward a little bit. And where are you? So give everyone like a quick synopsis of like, where are you at like right now? Like you have a HubSpot Solutions Partner business, right? Tell us about it. What's it like being a solutions partner in 2024? What are like the best parts? What are the worst parts? Give us the lay of the land of like where you're at now. And then we're going to go back a bit, and we want to figure out how we got there, because you came up in the agency world and in a little bit of a different direction. And now you're doing your thing on your own. Right.
And I'll add to that, because I was like, I think George B. Thomas works at HubSpot. It was like the very first thing. I was like, I'm pretty sure he works there. Some way form. I
remember seeing you there. There was this one point where I remember you went and you sat with the academy a couple of days, and I remember walking in and I like opened a door, and I think I was like going to see one of my friends on the Premier team or something, and they sat with academy, and I remember you like sitting in there, and I see the door closing, and then you look over at me, and then the door closes. I don't know if you remember that moment.
Oh my god!
But I remember seeing you at this one point. But this is way before we knew each other, though. I was like, wait, isn't that guy?
So it's funny because there were two times that I'm very proud of, but I don't talk about a lot. I'll go into those real quick, and then I'll go into like where we're at.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is a hard conversation to have, because there's where we're at now, and then there's going to be like where we're at in a couple of months, or when like people are listening to this. So I'm going to try to paint both of those pictures.
Yeah. And we're going to, we want to talk about it.
So here's the thing. There's two times that I went and by the way, Dax, we're not the only person that thought that I worked at HubSpot Academy. I literally have been on trainings, and they're like, your software really should do this. I'm like, bro, if it was my software, I would not be on this training. I'm just letting you know that right now. There would be some other cat training you on this. But people would just, because it was so synonymous with HubSpot and the color orange. I mean, look at my office. But I was all in, right? Which, by the way, there's another life lesson. Whatever you're going to do, be all in. Don't be lukewarm, because it's not a good look. Just don't be there. Be all in on whatever you choose to do. Two times. One, I got to get interviewed by Mark Killens, and it was about my inbound journey. Basically what we've been talking about now, because the HubSpot Academy team realized the impact that they were making in my life and making in others' lives. And we wanted to get that story out there. Because it was probably around 2017, 2018, I made it a point at Inbound to stop by the HubSpot Academy booth and thank the entire team, like gathered them together and thank them for all the work they had been doing, because I wanted them to know from my mouth to their ears that they had changed my life, that I was living a life, even back at that point in time, that was a dream that I never thought that I'd be able to achieve because of what the HubSpot Academy was doing. The other time is there's the HubSpot certified trainer program that everybody like wants to be part of and be a HubSpot certified trainer. I went to HubSpot because they wanted me to do a section of that actual training. So if you go watch the HubSpot certified trainer, you're going to end up seeing my face as part of that training, which is fun because it's about workshops and different stuff like that and selling workshops. And so those are two times where I'm like, wow, it feels like I'm actually doing something special here. Like HubSpot is asking me to come and add value to like the core of what they're doing. And so those were special. Now, let me just explain where we're at. So I started in June of 2022. Yeah, June of 2022.
Right?
I started George B. Thomas LLC. Okay. It was only going to be me. It was going to be a lifestyle brand. I was going to eke out an existence and maybe do some coaching for some folks and some training and do some workshops and maybe go speak. Within the first 3 months, we are actually a HubSpot Gold partner.
I remember that too, man. Like when you're like, yo, I'm gonna do my own thing, because you worked at an agency.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
10 at different
yeah,
agencies. Yeah.
right at the beginning of the Aptimus day, it was like, yo, where do you use like, oh, I'm gonna break out my own thing. Cool. Looks like it worked. Just a
Yeah.
spoiler alert.
Yeah, it's working. So within the first 3 months, we were a gold partner. Within the first 4.5 to 5 months, I hired my son to do podcast editing and video editing. A month after that, or a month after, maybe a month and a half after that, I hired my wife to do project management and billing, and my daughter to do project management. Now we're sitting here as George B. Thomas LLC. There's about 10 of us, the entire family plus contractors. And what's fun is we've even given birth to a new term because thanks to last inbound, by the way, we had to coin a phrase called the feme. Because as we were walking around and people were like, hey, George B. Thomas, George B. Thomas, and I'm introducing my wife, my 2 daughters, my one son who was there with us. I have 2 sons. One wasn't there last year. And I'm saying, hey, this is my daughter. This is my son. My one daughter goes, Dad, can't you just tell him like you're part of your team? And I'm like, but that's weird. You're my family. Well, you're a team too. So my one daughter, she goes, hey, how about your feme? Because family always comes first. So, dude, I was like, there's a hook in that. Let me try this. So I started introducing them as the feme. And as soon as I said, because family comes first, you could see the emotional buy-in from people. So the rest of inbound, that's how I introduced them. This is my feme. And we got that story laid out. And now we've written blog articles about it. But I've now been able to hire my other son. So I employ my entire family. Plus, I have Jorge, who is an amazing HubSpot implementation specialist. And he just, by the way, the day of this recording, he just had his 1 year GBT anniversary. He's worked for us for a year. And my dude went from 6 certifications to 43 certifications in the year that he's worked for the organization. Okay. So we're creating a culture where we're creating a culture where it's all about education. It's all about adding the value of the education. He's now doing HubSpot tutorials on our YouTube channel. Like he's starting to build his own brand because I want to be able to build something where we're creating a space where everybody can be the best that they can be. They can live the best life that they want to live. And so what that looks like is we're transitioning over the next probably month and a half to 2 months. And there's going to be a special thing that we're going to do on the internet. And I'm probably going to ruin it right now, but hey, I'm with you guys. So let me just share it. But there's going to be a real interesting April 1st social media post that's going to come out. And I'm not sure yet if it's going to have to do something with, I've decided to become a Salesforce consultant, or if it's going to be something of, well, I guess it didn't work. George B. Thomas LLC is going out of business. I'm not real sure which direction we want to take it, but we're going to do an April Fool's Day post, and we're going to launch to the world. So we're coming out with a real special thing that we're going to announce, sidekickstrategies.com, because we want to show up as an agency, because now we've realized that while I wanted to be a lone wolf lifestyle brand, the universe had something else planned. There's been maximum amount of growth. We've been trying to keep up the entire time. I'm not trying to grow anything huge. I really don't care if I ever become like diamond or elite. Like that's not what we're chasing. We're trying to chase this plan of being significant in the community with people who love what they do. They love who they do it for, and they don't have to worry about having crazy, crappy clients. Like they just have clients that are like good humans, because the one thing with the ecosystem, the culture that I've been building is I've been repping the, hey, happy, helpful, humble humans for the last 10 to 12 years. And the fun thing about that is the people that are coming to work with us, they're happy, helpful, humble humans. Like they just want somebody who's going to be a man or woman of their word. They want to know if they ask for something to be done, it's going to get done. And being a good human shouldn't be a business differentiator. But ladies and gentlemen, being a good human is a business differentiator. It's crazy. And so one of the things that I want everybody to take out of this is that, yes, we're going to say that we're an agency. And I'm bringing this up for 2 reasons. One, there are so many agencies in our ecosystem that are talking about, I'm a boutique, or I'm this, or I'm that. Or they'll preach from the mountaintops, the agency model is broken. No, the word agency is still the word that it's always been. It's the humans that are running them and the humans that are in them that are broken. And I believe firmly that we can create an agency that doesn't have to feel like it's broken. And that is literally the mantra that I'm grabbing and I'm going with is every step of the way. How do I build something that I can just fundamentally say, this is different. This feels different. It works different. It's just different. And when I say different, I mean in a better way. That my index of success is how happy the humans are inside and how much work is getting done for the humans outside. That everybody is happy with what they're getting paid and what they have to do. And I know I'm painting a very grandiose, yeah, bro, you're just getting started. I know. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but this is where my mind is. I want to be able to say, here is a example, one of many, by the way, because there are many in our ecosystem that are doing it great. But here is another example of how you could run an agency in a very positive, they want to be called humans, not employees way.
All you're talking about is the reason why this organism exists. It's a human, right? We can get super esoteric and understand why we're here, what we're doing here, where do we go, where we come from. But while we're here, all struggling together, the key word is together. Like we are all one, like a mushroom. It's that is one big organism that can take over if it stays together. You're preaching to the choir, man. And I hope everyone that's listening really understands that. Just be nice. Like you have to say, please be kind and courteous to others. That is a sign that you see everywhere because it has to be explicitly said. It's like Python. It's better to be explicit than be implicit. Just say, well, you got to be kind.
I want to double down on that though, Dax, because here's the thing. To be kind to others, you have to be kind to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I need people to really hear that and just embrace it for a second, because so many of us are working in organizations or running organizations, and we just aren't being kind to ourselves. We're not taking self-care into consideration. We're not mapping out the life we want. We're not setting the true goals that matter. We're chasing this like viral social media example of success versus building something that is based on you being able to sleep at night because you realize you've become of significance.
Yeah. All right. Now, George, the direction I want to take this in, right, is like you've built many a thing. You've built communities within the greater HubSpot community. You've built a little media empire within the HubSpot community, whether you're looking at the countless hours of educational HubSpot content you've put into the HubSpot ethos, right? You've also built this amazing solutions partner business, and you've also built this brand for yourself, this like personal brand, right? And what I'm thinking about right now is, with the age of all the tech layoffs and, even folks with a lot of HubSpot knowledge, maybe even leaving HubSpot in certain situations or, trying to break in to, never mind breaking into tech, like breaking into HubSpot is like an even, cooler thing if you ask me. What have you learned about, building a personal brand that you would want to share with others out there? Because I think like without a doubt, like you started your own HubSpot Solutions Partner agency, but you started it in a very different place than just anyone off the street is going to. While other people are going to be like, all right, what am I going to do to go get my first client and all this kind of stuff? You had this like beautiful brand that you built up for yourself over the years, right? And you used that as the springboard to get into the partner consulting space, right? That's not something that everybody has when they start doing this, right? What sort of advice would you have for folks who are going, I know in order to break in and build my own HubSpot Solutions Partner business or go out there and be a consultant, right? There's a lot of voices and a lot of stuff that I have to compete with, right? But I know I need to put myself out there. I know I need to create content to go out into the universe and get noticed, like all this kind of stuff. In today's world of that, like where would you encourage someone to start who wants to go down that path of trying to make a name for myself a little bit so I can launch something off the back of that and work from that place? Like where would you even tell that person to get started?
Yeah. So first of
Or
all,
would you tell him to go that route too? That's the other question.
it depends.
Yeah.
It depends. Like, it really depends on the individual human. Listen, for a lot of years, I told myself the story, I'm a great number 2 to a number 1. I'm a great Robin to a Batman. The unfortunate thing
Whoa.
is, the unfortunate thing is
Hold
I
the
was probably
no, George. You need to talk about that. People don't realize that they are the God themselves. They
the,
are the one. All you need is you. Man, that hurt my heart when you just feel like I need somebody else to lead. I am a shepherd. I am a follower. When people are not, you are in control. You think you are not in control. You are in control. Nothing happens to you. It happens because of you. And that is
for
why
you.
you need to
Yeah.
go. You need to go and do the things, man. That number 2, because I would never get
Yeah.
George.
No,
George needs a boss. I'm gonna give
I
George a boss
agree.
right now.
Listen, I agree. And where I'll go with that is I was lying to myself, but I needed to lie to myself for a while until I could have the self-belief that I needed to jump off the cliff that would actually happen when time came. Okay? Now, let me go ahead and go back at this a little bit, because what I want you to do, if you're listening to this, I want you to write down CAP. Yes, cap. By the way, I wear a cap every day. It says happy, helpful, humble humans. Max has a line of hats that you might want to check out because I'm shilling for Big Cohen here. And here's the deal. Cap. I'm going to talk about this in a second. It's a thing that three pieces that are really important to anybody's success, whether you're working in another organization, whether you own an organization and you're trying to build a brand around it. But when I think about building a personal brand or a corporate brand in especially today's society, cap. Okay. Number 1 is consistency. Listen, I didn't do anything extraordinary. I showed up on a day or 2 or 3 a week. I created a video, I put it out on YouTube, and I shared it on social media. That's not extraordinary, right? But showing up for 10 years, 11 years, 12 years consistently, now all of a sudden that's extraordinary, because it's not a flash in the pan. It's proving yourself that you're not going anywhere. And when you're not going anywhere, then what do people start to do? They start to trust you. You put out 3,000 tutorials. What happens? They start to know you. You be your crazy self. What happens? Well, if they like that kind of crazy, they like you, right? So now you got the know and trust because you're being consistent with the content that you're creating and putting out in the world, one brick at a time. I love the Will Smith video about how he built a wall in his father's shop, one brick at a time. That's how you build a brand, one brick over the years. And eventually it gets to this point where magic can happen. We'll talk about the magic that's happening. I mentioned crazy you, right? If they like the crazy, if they like the you, then you got them. And that's the other thing is authenticity. Look, I didn't come and create my videos and try to make them perfect. I didn't come and create the videos or the podcast and try to sound smart. I just showed up as me, and I asked weird questions and I made weird comments, and I started to connect the dots in the way that I connected the dots around HubSpot and inbound and sales and marketing. And I just brought it authentically as me as a human. So you're coming to the world, adding value consistently. You're being yourself. You're being a whole ass human and being authentic when you're actually doing it. And then here's the secret sauce that's really hard for most people. Is it just a healthy dose of patience? You got to realize this is not a microwave situation. This is grandma's crock pot. It's going to have to sit there and percolate a little bit. You're going to have to give it time, smell the aroma, not lift up the lid until it's actually ready. And here's the thing. I sat and listened to Dan Tyre one time tell me, George, you are a human you are inbound in human form. You have taken the original inbound methodology and just made yourself that for the HubSpot community. And what we were talking about is over the 10 years of creating the video tutorials, creating the Hubcast podcast, doing the Sprocket Talk YouTube channel and going from 0 subscribers to over 8,000 subscribers, and realizing those 8,000 subscribers were only 26% of the viewable audience that was actually watching the content. You do that math. realizing that what I had been doing for that 10 years was pulling back a slingshot, building a brand, building value, building trust. And then on June of 2022, when I went on the internet and I said, hey, I'm starting my own business, I let go of the slingshot. And brothers, I'm telling you right now, that's what it's felt like. I felt like somebody strapped me on the top of a rocket ship. And the last almost 2 years has been like, hold on, I don't know where we're going, but shoo, we're getting there fast.
That's what I'm talking about. There's no question. If, as an elder, do you not trust the elders? Do you not trust someone like that? Take that wisdom, right? That wisdom is action over time and implemented. That thought.
Yep.
I think the same thing when people have kids. George, you got a couple kids. They're grown. You got four. A couple. I got two. You got four. You got double the wisdom. You've raised teenager kids. I don't have that wisdom, right? I would trust someone that has that type of wisdom to give me that advice. Those years and years you put in, seeing it grow, seeing HubSpot evolve, being a part of that evolution. That's why people need to get started today so you can build wisdom. Because if you don't get started till next year, you will not have wisdom next year. You will be on day zero next year. And this community, this environment, this ecosystem that we're building in is so inviting for that day zero. You will not be lost, wandering, tripping around stones and sticks on day zero. There are people like you, people like Max, people like all the big stars in this, I would say stars in this solar system that are shining their light and are willing to have a conversation. I mean, it's not hard to get a hold of George B. Thomas. It's not hard to get a hold of anybody in this because it's still early. It's still early. We're talking about 2012. That's 2014. That's 10 years ago. I started HubSpot in 2019. You know what I'm saying? Like I couldn't imagine when it was just like Marketing Hub. It was just like this one thing, but you knew it, you taught it, you helped other people learn it, and people just got to get started. They got to walk in, man. So, I mean, I'll tell you.
Here's why I love that. Hold on. Here's why I love that analogy, the slingshot analogy, right? You can start pulling back the slingshot before you actually aim it, right? Which means for all those folks out there who are like struggling with analysis paralysis of what they want to build in this beautiful, wonderful HubSpot universe that we're all lucky enough to be in, right? Again, George just started making videos. He didn't know exactly where this was going, right? But he kept pulling that slingshot back. And towards the end, as he started to figure it out, the target became a lot clearer, right? Then he started to aim it before he had to let it go, right? So I think the big thing that I'm pulling away from that is like, folks out there, like you don't have to have the entire thing figured out and lined up and do it perfectly. Just start doing something in the space and see where it takes you. Now, speaking of slingshots firing out super quickly, you went from 0 to gold in what was it? 3 months?
3 months.
Right? Dude, what was it like going out and getting that like first client on your own? Right. Because again, before you at your agencies, I'm assuming you had people doing this part for you. Yeah. Right. But all of a sudden you had to become the BDR, the AE, the full cycle salesperson to go out there and actually sell your services, not just deliver it. Yeah. Right. What was it like for you going out and having to like play those roles and do that? And what advice do you have for anyone who knows that's the first thing that they got to go and tackle? Yeah. Right. What did you learn about that? And what was it like? And how'd you get there that fast?
Yeah. It's interesting. I've never actually been asked that question. And I love that I'm being asked this question because
sorry, first question alert.
There you go. So here's the thing. What I'll say is, as you're sitting here listening to this podcast, I would challenge you that you really don't know who you are. You have no clue what you're capable of. And the only time that you'll figure out who you are and what you're capable of is when you put yourself in a place of discomfort where you know you have to do something. Now, here's the fun thing. I knew there was nobody coming to save me, Max. I knew nobody was sitting behind me, Dax. I had to just go and do it. Like I had to make it happen. And if I did make it happen, I knew also the worst case scenario, which by the way, is not a worst case scenario because my wife and I had the conversation. Babe, worst case scenario, I go work for somebody. I've been working for somebody for 45 years. It's really not that big a deal. Let's take a shot. But here's the fun thing about sales is I actually realized that I love it. And I actually realized that I'm really good at it. Maybe too good at it because that's why we hit gold in 3 months because I'm really good at it. That's why we have a small team and 11 monthly retainer clients, because I'm good at it, right? I'm good at understanding the humans. I'm good at communicating. I'm good at understanding. More importantly, I'm better at listening to what they need and then being able to actually formulate a solution based on over 12 years of understanding marketing, sales, service, all the tools, what we can connect, what we can hack, what we can do, who we know that we could tag in that's even smarter than me on certain areas that we need to do. Because one of the things that I learned, and I think it's Chris Doe, he said, don't sell what you can do, sell what the world can do. Right. And so coming into this, I know what I can do. And I know what all my, guys and gal friends in the inbound ecosystem can do. There's no reason for me to be scared about selling this, because somehow, some way, we're going to make it happen. And so I just started having conversations, by the way, and I didn't really try to sell anything. I said, here's the 3 packages. This is why I built the package this way. If you want one of them, let me know. I'll send you a quote. And people would pick one of the 3 off the shelf. They would send a quote. They would send me money. And all of a sudden, we're doing a discovery meeting. And what I want to say here is, I wasn't trying to sell them. I was trying to serve them. And in that fact of actually serving them, what I was doing was creating a process that I kept it simple. I didn't need 12 discovery meetings and 13 people and do a 12-hour blueprint. No, here's what we can do. Here's what it costs. If it's a right fit for you, let me know. If not, I've got friends that I can actually introduce you to that they could probably service you better.
Interesting.
That was the process.
How are you how are you putting together those first initial packages you offered, knowing it was like just you at the beginning, right? Like, how much did you have to really experiment to really understand like what your bandwidth looks like and how much you can handle right before you hit that point of, I've got to lean on these other people in my network to come help deliver this or deliver that? Because if someone's just sitting there, hey, what should I offer? Knowing I'm one person and I have these particular set of skills, right? What advice would you give about someone like putting together those first initial service offerings?
Yeah, I can only tell you what I did. First of all, I challenged myself. Okay. We would not be where we're at right now if I did what I initially thought I was going to do. And there's 2 things that I want to point out here. One, when I was first thinking about starting my business, I said, I'm going to do everything. We're going to do HubSpot. We're going to do video editing. We're going to do podcast editing. We'll do it all for everybody. And then about 30 days before I started my business, I was like, no, I've got to build this website. You know what we're going to do? We're going to do HubSpot. We're going to help people with HubSpot, which, by the way, still means a lot. There's HubSpot sales, there's HubSpot service, there's HubSpot RevOps, there's HubSpot commerce, there's HubSpot market, like HubSpot CMS, it's still a lot, but we're just going to do HubSpot. So getting very specific on the things that we were going to do at the beginning was really important. The other thing that I challenged myself with was, I was one of these people that said, man, I've never made $100 an hour. I should probably make my rate $100 an hour. And it was about, 2 weeks before I started my business that I said, what if it's possible? What if people would pay me $300 an hour? That would help me get to where I need to get, because, by the way, total vulnerability, total transparency. When I was talking to my wife for the 2 weeks before we jumped off this ledge, it was like, look, 2 things need to be true. 1, there needs to be money in the bank every 2 weeks, like you're working for a company. 2, we need to have insurance because we have kids in this house. So out of that, I knew that I needed to set 3 goals. I need this to survive. This would be great. And we'll never hit that number. So I set those 3 goals. And I realized the survival number, if I did $100 an hour as my rate, I would be dead in the first 6 months, because there's no way I could do that amount of work. So I said, what if this brand is actually more powerful than I think it is? And what if I charge $300 an hour? Which was fun, because then what I was able to do is actually give people a $50 an hour discount and come in at $250 and still be more times over than what my original rate was going to be. And here's what's funny. The first time I said these words, hey, I've got 3 retainer options, because we pretty much put everybody on retainers because we realize this thing called inbound is going to take time. We've got retainer number 1, which is 10 hours a month. It's $2,500 a month. We've got retainer 2, which is 20 hours a month, and that one's 5,000. Or we've got one that you can get 30 hours of our time at 7,500 a month. Now, the reason we did this is because we want to be able to work with people who have a small budget, but we also realize that some people are in a hurry and they really want to get stuff done quick. So now you can pick whichever retainer works best for you. And people would be like, I want number 2, or I want number 1. Or what was really giddy is when people was like, yeah, I want to go fast. Just give me that 7,500 a month. And I'm like, oh my God, I just sold something.
Yeah.
Oh my God. They
Electric.
actually paid my $300 an hour rate. Like, oh my God, am I worth? You want to talk about an existential crisis when you realize that they didn't balk. They didn't even think for a second. They just said, yeah, I'll take number 3. Give it to me. Can you have me quote by the end of the day? And you're like, I could have charged $500 an hour, probably. Crap.
Yeah.
And then you're like, no. Now you're going in the wrong direction. You're being selfish. You're being like, there's no reason to be gluttonous. If it's a good price and they're finding the value and that's where your brand is, then just stay in your lane and make it happen. And baby, we've been making it happen since the beginning, right? And so here's the thing. We not only hit gold in the first 3 months, but Max and Dax, we hit we'll never hit that number goal the 3rd month we were in business. And I was like, oh, I need to start hiring somebody.
Yes.
That's an interesting place to go next, right?
Like, I got to buy back my time.
Yeah. So what was it that you got to that place where it's, okay, maxed out my bandwidth, I need to hire someone, right? What did you notice about your day-to-day or what was happening in the business that got you to that point? And then what was your strategy for going out and like finding your Jorge, right? Tell people that.
So the first part is I knew that the one thing I would never stop doing is creating content, because creating content is that valuable to the brand and who I am, just from the pure essence of bringing that to the world. I also knew that I was spending anywhere from 15 to 20 hours a week building that brand, editing, publishing. So the first thing I did was I bought back 15 to 20 hours of my week by hiring my son, because I could teach him how to do podcast editing and video editing. I realized through my struggle of going through the messy middle, it didn't have to be perfect to be watched. And I was willing to give some stuff that my audience maybe was like, ooh, did he take a couple steps back? Like, his editing ain't quite there. I don't give a crap. I was still putting content out, and Noah was learning how to do a new job that he had never done before, right? But which, by the way, he picked up really quick and did a really great job. And it's been amazing to see him and Seth both do podcast editing and video editing and give me that time back in my week. But the reason I made that decision is because I knew, as the guy who had 42 HubSpot certifications, I need to be spending more time in HubSpot and more time in client portals. But I still want to be able to make the content. I just need somebody to produce and publish the content for me. Yeah. Now, when I got to the point where I knew I needed Jorge, is because I just couldn't spend any more time in HubSpot portals or in client portals, because there was just no more time to buy back. There was no more optimizing the things around me with my family. It was like, nope, we need to build another expert. And so I literally put out this, what some people might call a dumb blog post about looking for a HubSpot implementation specialist. And it's got the Fast and Furious family on the front of it. And it's Mia Familia. Like, we're looking to add to the family. And here's what you get. And here's what we want to do. And we interviewed a couple people. And my family actually was like, oh, it's Jorge. Like, you need to hire Jorge. They just had a feeling. And so we hired Jorge. And again, you can see what's happened. Like, today we launched a blog article of what he's learned in the last year. He went to the 43 HubSpot certifications. He's just become a fundamental part of what we're able to achieve from a client success service. And the way that I know that he's being successful, the way that I know I'm being a good leader, The way that I know we're building an organization that I'm dreaming of is I have clients come to me and be like, woo, brother, you won the lottery with Jorge. Their words, not mine.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I know. I am trying to create a place where I can get the best Jorge possible. And he is giving me the best Jorge possible.
Now, was he already like a HubSpot like pro, or is that something he molded into, or what?
So he had used HubSpot at his father's company. He had also journeyed into what he would even call a toxic agency job and agency relationship. He had 6 HubSpot certifications, so he knew a little bit.
Sure.
The funny thing is, and I don't mean to sound any sort of way about this, you can know a little bit about HubSpot. Heck, you can even know a medium amount about HubSpot. But it ain't my way.
Yeah.
It ain't the GBT way. It ain't, you're not communicating it the same way. You're probably trying to regurgitate what HubSpot Academy is saying. And through the 10, 12 years, like I've learned training people, I've learned to communicate it in a different way that people just understand. And I've learned to do it in a way that's just a little bit faster than most people can do it. And so what was nice is we were able to take this kind of like small burning fire and put Jorge in the ecosystem and around me and do one-on-ones. And we do weekly deep dive discussions where it's just him and I like talking about stuff. And he'll ask me like last week, George, I just want to know all this stuff that you're doing with AI right now. I see you putting AI prompts in like our chat channel, and can just give me a deep dive of how are you using that to create content? And like, he's curious. By the way, that's another like superpower. If you're looking for people, and one thing that I'll look for till the day that whatever is, do you have a healthy dose of curiosity and you want to learn these things and implement these things? And so he's just had the ability to foster that curiosity and have a mentor in me. And I say that in a very humble way of, I give him, and he even said this, you give me the freedom that I don't feel like I'm going to fail. I just feel like I'm going to learn something. And I'm like, oh, for a guy who didn't want to manage humans and just wanted to be a lifestyle brand, I actually think I'm a little bit better at this than I thought. Ladies and gentlemen, did I mention that sitting, listening to this, you don't know who you are? You don't know what you're capable of?
Now you do.
Now you do.
Once you do it, well, I'll leave it at this, man, because we can sit here and spend days killing the game.
I need to get on a Tim Ferriss podcast where he gives me like 4 hours.
Yeah. So right. So listen to this. Books, right? I'm gonna ask you a quick 3 questions that we always end it with, that and see where your mind is at. But when I used to read a ton of books, I would be like, you should read this book, skateboarder friend. Oh man, I'm not a reader. Hey, homie, check this book out. It'll change you. I'm not a reader. You know what it takes to be a reader? Reading. As soon as you read, you are a reader. People are so quick to say what you aren't. If you did it, then you are. And GBT, that's almost like the GPT. I was like, what?
Yeah.
It's right there.
It's domain, by the way. I tried to apply chat GBT. It was like $60,000. I said no.
They're going for that AdSense / typo. But nonetheless, dude, you lived it, you breathed it, you're here, you're more than here. I need to ask you 3 fast questions, dude. After I say, thank you for coming, number 1. Let's get that out of the way, because the resonance is hot. People are going to enjoy feeling the pressure of being who they are capable of. There's pressure to do that every day. You should be this.
Yes.
George, you got the theme.
Yep.
What's your favorite thing to do? You got all the theme together. Everybody in the same house. What are you doing?
Well, we're not in the house, brother. My favorite thing to do is go on. Like, I can't wait for the day that I can take the whole organization on a Sidekick Strategies cruise. We will be on
and
a
maybe
ship.
Your favorite podcast host too, as well.
Yeah. Yes, it'll be podcast hosts. It'll be the theme. It'll be contract. Like, I can't wait till we can arrive at the place where, like, okay, we're all going to go on a 7-day or 10-day cruise. Bring your family. Let's go. Because that's my Zen place, Dax, is, and I'll correlate it back to the fact that as a young man, I was in the Navy, right? And so I was aboard ship and I've been in the middle of the ocean, and it always takes me back to the beginning of my journey. And I'll sit there with a nice beverage, a nice cigar. I'll be looking out at the ocean and I'll be like, oh, we're doing it, right? And so that would be the whole theme would be on a cruise ship, and we'd be enjoying life and we'd be relaxing so that we could refuel for what we would come back and how we would impact the world.
That's a good one. I'm a fan of the cruise myself.
It's an ice cream, baby.
An ice cream, unlimited. Favorite color?
Yes.
Kind of a trick question, but what's favorite color?
But see, that's the thing. You say it's a trick question, but it's not. My
Yeah,
favorite color is purple.
Sky blue.
Nah,
purple.
My favorite color is purple.
Hey.
It's funny. It's funny because everybody's, his favorite color is orange. Not really. Go look at georgebthomas.com. I made it purple. Sure, my background is orange. Sure, I'm creating content around HubSpot. Their brand is orange. Sure, I've got an orange ring around my mic, but that doesn't mean it's my favorite color. It's just a color that has to be part of the brand. So even Sidekick Strategies, right? The main colors we're going with are like black and white with a neon green and a touch of orange. Okay. So
I mean,
we're not
part of the purple. So you already answered the way I wanted to answer.
There
I secretly knew the answer to that from back in the day because I was like,
yes,
hey,
I did tell you that. You cheated.
I'm a big fan of purple. Huge. I did cheat. It's okay. It's my show. Now, the last question.
Whew.
Favorite movie? Not new.
See,
favorite OG movie.
This is tough.
I'm talking, you've seen it on VHS. For the kids out there,
the
VHS is a tape.
Wow.
Okay. It's like a cassette, but it's bigger.
So, I mean, if you go back to VHS,
I am.
It's funny because just that piece, instantly something came to my brain. Where before that was a hard question to answer because I love
movie?
Avatar.
No, what's your favorite movie on VHS?
Yeah, Star Wars, without a doubt. Star Wars. Listen, I was even talking to Kyle Jepsen the other day, and he almost refuses to watch Star Wars on anything other than a VHS tape. And I would agree. If you put that VHS tape in and you start to watch Star Wars in the way that it originally was designed, sure, on the new TVs, it's a little bit rough, but you realize the pure genius that was going on at that point in time with the technology they had and what they were able to create. So I definitely got to lean in. Favorite movie on VHS would be Star Wars.
Man, you just made I'll take that. I just made me think of the recording meetings. We were talking about that. I was like, I have a cassette tape. People don't know what these are nowadays. This is a tape.
Yeah.
This is actually me as a child.
Yep.
Talking with the dog that walked across the street, and I was talking to the dog with the door on cassette tape. How did my parents record that? I don't know. And then you got these things, right? You got records. Come on. You touched me somehow, some way, without thinking about the medium, right? The message is in the medium.
Yes.
It's different. You can listen to a song. You can listen to someone give you HubSpot training, but it's about the medium. It's about how it's said. It's about the crackle. It's about the raw originality of the person. And I, George B. Thomas, thank you for coming on the Bill Happily podcast because you brought a raw, an original, a crackly, warbly
love it
point of view that's raw, that's uncut, that everyone can appreciate. So shout out to you, man. Let them know where can we find you? Where can these people find you?
Yeah, I mean, I could just say
where
search
can't they
George
find you
B.
these days?
Thomas.
Jeez.
What, Max?
So where can't they find you?
We got tricked, man.
I could say Google George B. Thomas, but I'm not going to be that guy. No douchebags allowed. So here's the thing. Go to LinkedIn. That's my only rule, by the way. No douchebags allowed. Go to LinkedIn, George B. Thomas. Go to georgebthomas.com. Heck, email me if you loved this or you hated this. George@georgebthomas.com. In the very near future, you could go to sidekickstrategies.com if you want to. We're getting ready to launch that bad boy truly to the world. But listen, LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter at George B. Thomas.
Are you forgetting a podcast you should be promoting?
No, not dope podcasts. I'll mention two if you don't mind. One, very specific to the HubSpot community that I love, is near and dear to my heart. We've got Max Cohen, we've got Devin Bellamy, we've got Liz Moorhead, and myself. check out the Hub Heroes podcast for sure. If you want spastic, educational, entertaining content, because that's what we're going to bring. And then if you want the other side of me, by the way, hopefully you've realized through this interview, I've touched into some more core principles of life and being human. If you want to see what that side of me is a little bit more, then you definitely have to check out the Beyond Your Default podcast that we launched. By the way, out of the success that was happening in the business and the belief that happened to me that I needed to bring that to the world, that's why that podcast was birthed.
Love it.
Appreciate it, man. So I want to say thanks again. Max, you got any closing words for this beautiful human?
Nah,
right
man. I mean, it's just every hour I get to spend with you is well worth the time, my friend. And I'm so stoked that we got you to come in here and tell us your story. And I'm just hoping that there's other folks out there right now that are like taking all those little bits and pieces that you were able to, dive into a little bit deeper. And hopefully they're pulling a lesson out of that they can use in their own journey and starting either their own personal brand, becoming a consultant, breaking into the HubSpot space, just trying to do better in life in general, like whatever it may be. And dude, I know you're a busy guy and I appreciate you coming on here and taking that time to share with the world. So
yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. I'm always down for being on a podcast. I'm always down for adding value. And listeners, I'll close this out with just saying one thing here, and that's just take one step at a time. Focus on becoming 1% better each and every day. Chase a life that gets you to your dreams and realize that you have the power to create your own destiny. That's, if you need somebody to talk through that with, then freaking email me. But that's what I need you to do. I need you to take action on the words that you've heard here on this amazing podcast today.